So you're binge watching courses, you're crushing audiobooks at 2 times speed, you're putting in the hours day after day trying to get to that next level. But let's be honest for a second, you're not actually getting better, are you? You feel stuck. You're on this performance plateau and you forget, 90% of what you learn almost instantly? So what if the problem isn't you? What if it's not about effort or talent? What if the way we've all been taught to learn is just wrong, designed for comfort, not for growth? Well, today we're going to dig into why that is, and we're going to install a brand new protocol to fix it. Okay, let's just rip the Band-Aid off with a truth that goes against pretty much everything you've ever been told about learning. We've been sold this idea of effortless learning, right? That our brains are just these sponges we're supposed to passively dunk into a pool of information. But the actual science of how our brain rewires itself, neuroplasticity, it tells us the complete opposite. Real, lasting growth in your brain doesn't come from ease. It comes from intense cognitive load. It's a direct response to metabolic stress. In other words, it's supposed to feel hard. That friction you feel when you're really wrestling with a new idea, that's not a sign you're failing to learn. That's the only sign that you are. So this leads to a pretty tough question you've got to ask yourself. What if your practice, all that highlighting, all the rereading, passively watching tutorials, what if it isn't just ineffective, but it's actually making you weaker? What if those comfortable habits are just creating this illusion of progress while really just digging you deeper into a cognitive rut? It's possible the very methods you think are building you up are actually locking you into a state of permanent amateurism. So right now, we're going to tear down that easy learning lie and build a new system for a brain that doesn't just consume information, but truly masters it. All right, so first up, let's diagnose the issue. Your brain on autopilot. We need to look at the science of why we get stuck, why so many smart, hardworking people hit this invisible wall and just stop improving, no matter how much time they put in. And that this isn't some personal failure, it's a biological feature. It's a state of cognitive automation, and it is the silent killer of all growth. The reason you're stuck is something called the illusion of competence. You know that feeling, right? You're sitting in a lecture or reading a book and it all just clicks. You're nodding along, it makes perfect sense, but then the second you try to actually use that information from scratch without any notes, poof, your mind is a total blank. It feels like you know it, but you can't actually do it. See, this isn't a memory problem. It's a training problem. You've accidentally trained yourself to be a spectator of information, not a performer of the skill. And the biological mechanism behind this is what we'll call the recognition glitch. See, your brain's #1 job, above everything else, is to save energy. And real thinking, real learning, that's expensive. It burns a lot of calories. So to avoid that cost, your brain came up with a shortcut. It fakes a feeling of mastery when it simply recognizes something it's seen before. To your brain, seeing the answer feels the same as knowing the answer. It's a clever little con job your brain pulls on you to get a cheap hit of dopamine, so you'll stop doing the hard work way before it triggers any real change. It's the biggest single thing holding you back. So this is the real battle happening in your head. On one side, you've got recognition. That's the illusion. It's passive, it feels easy. It's what you're doing when you just reread your notes. On the other side, you've got retrieval. And that's the reality. This is active, it feels hard, it's a struggle. It's the act of pulling information out of your brain without any help, like trying to explain a complex idea to a friend from memory. For too long, you've been living in the world of recognition, mistaking that easy feeling for actual mastery. But all the real growth, all the strength, it only happens on the side of retrieval. And I really want you to get this. This has nothing to do with how smart you are. You aren't lacking IQ, you're lacking resistance. Think about it. For years, that incredible muscle between your ears has been doing the mental equivalent of lifting 5-pound dumbbells and then wondering why it's not getting any stronger. You've been doing cognitive cardio when what you really need is cognitive weightlifting. This isn't a character flaw. It's just a failure in your training system, and we're here to install a new one. Okay, so that's the problem. Now, let's talk about the fix. We're going to call it the Neural Hypertrophy Engine. Now, hypertrophy, that's the biological term for how muscles grow in response to stress. We're going to apply that exact same principle to our neurons. We're done treating the mind like some delicate, soft sponge. From now on, we treat it like a muscle that we're taking to the gym. This is the gym science for your brain, a 3-part system designed to force biological growth. So the protocol has 3 core pillars designed to force your brain to adapt. Pillar number 1 is the resistance filter. This is a total mindset flip where you stop asking, how can I make this easier? And you start asking, how can I make this just 10% harder to force my brain to actually work? Pillar 2, rep to failure retrieval. Yeah, just like in the gym. We're going to push our brain to struggle for an answer until it hits a wall, that point of functional failure, because that's the trigger for growth. And third, interleaved volume. Instead of grinding on one topic for hours, we're going to mix it up, switching between different but related skills. This keeps your brain from ever slipping into that lazy autopilot mode. It's not about studying more, it's about lifting heavier. So what does this actually look like day to day? Well, let's put the old method, the one you're probably using now, head to head with our new protocol. The old method is all about passively reviewing your notes, which just feeds that recognition glitch. It means you immediately look at the answer when you get stuck, which robs your brain of the struggle it needs. And it means cramming one topic for hours, which just leads to boredom and autopilot. The new protocol flips every single one of those. Instead of reviewing, we add resistance. Instead of looking up answers, we force retrieval to failure. And instead of cramming, we interleave our practice to keep the brain sharp and engaged. And look, the change here isn't just small. It's a total transformation. You are fundamentally rewiring your brain's architecture. You're turning your mind from a soft sponge, passively soaking up information and then forgetting it just as fast, into a hardened engine, a machine that can generate its own power, solve new and complex problems, and produce original ideas on command. This is the leap from passive awareness to active, usable mastery. Okay, but how does this actually work? Like, what's happening inside your skull? Because this isn't some fluffy mindset hack. This is about physically re-engineering your brain for high performance. Let's get into the hard science. You know that feeling of frustration when you're stuck on a problem? That's not you failing. That's you literally triggering the upgrade signal. Deep inside your brain, there's a region called the Anterior Cingulate Cortex, or the ACC. It's your brain's error detection circuit. It's the uh-oh, this is hard alarm. And when you intentionally make it fire by struggling, it sends out a chemical memo to your neurons that says, hey, the current wiring is not cutting it for this load. We need an upgrade. Adapt or fail. And what's the upgrade? It's a process called myelination. When you repeatedly struggle at the very edge of your abilities, your brain responds to that alarm from the ACC by wrapping the relevant pathways in a fatty layer called myelin. Just think about it like putting better insulation on a wire. This insulation makes the signal travel way faster and more efficiently. So more struggle means more ACC activation, which means more myelin, which directly equals more speed and more skill. You are literally building a faster brain. The effect of this is absolutely profound. What you're doing here is basically overclocking your brain for a specific skill. You're pushing your biological hardware beyond its factory settings to perform at a higher level. You're not just learning a little faster, you are fundamentally upgrading the processing speed and the reliability of your brain for that skill. This is how the pros make incredibly complex things look so easy. Their brains are running on heavily myelinated superhighways. All right, theory's done, biology's done. Now it's time to get to work. Let's talk about your mental max-out protocol. This is where we stop talking and start doing. This is how you start adding weight to your mental lifts today. It's a simple 3-step action plan. You can start this literally the next time you sit down to learn something. Step 1, conduct a load audit. Before you start, just ask yourself, how can I make this 10% harder? Step 2, execute the 60-second retrieval. This is your new core exercise. And step 3, use the interleaving switch. If you've got an hour, break it into 3 20-minute chunks on different but related skills. It prevents autopilot and forces your brain to stay engaged. But let's zero in on that second step, because this is your new secret weapon, the 60-second retrieval. The next time your mind goes blank on a fact, a formula, a name, whatever, I want you to resist that powerful urge to Google it or check your notes. Instead, just stop. Close your eyes if you have to, set a mental timer for 1 full minute, and just struggle to retrieve it from your memory. That 60 seconds of pure, focused struggle is more valuable than an hour of passive rereading. That is the heavy lift. That is the moment you send the upgrade signal. Now, to make this stick, you've got to change how you measure success. Your goal is no longer to just finish the chapter or get through the video. That's a checklist mindset. Your new goal is to train the brain. You are a cognitive athlete. The information is your barbell. The objective isn't racking up hours, it's stimulating adaptation. It's about the quality and the intensity of the lift, not how many pages you turned. Okay, let's wrap this all up. Everything we've talked about, the science, the protocols, it all boils down to one single powerful idea. I want you to burn this into your mind. Learning is a physical event. It is not some abstract, floaty, mental thing. It is a biological process of stress recovery and adaptation, exactly like how your muscles grow after you lift weights. When you struggle, you're creating metabolic stress. That stress signals for adaptation. When you rest, your brain rebuilds those pathways stronger, faster, and more insulated. You have to apply a load to trigger growth. It's the only way. And that brings us to the core philosophy here. The 5 words I want you to take with you. Resistance is the architect of the mind. It's the sculptor. Without resistance, your mind just stays as this big block of potential, full of stuff it recognizes but unable to create anything new. But with deliberate, intelligent resistance, you can build a masterpiece. The friction, the struggle, the difficulty, that's not the obstacle to learning. That is the path. So that's your mission starting right now. Stop looking for the easy way. Start hunting for the hard way. Conduct a load audit on what you're trying to learn today. Find that 10% difficulty gap and just lean into it with everything you've got. Embrace the friction. Chase the struggle. Add the weight. Build the brain.